Hi and welcome to the Spirion Edge LTE installation video. In this video we will cover everything you need to know to ensure a successful installation of the Edge LTE device, starting with what you'll find in the box, the tools needed, and the steps we need to follow for a smooth and successful installation. First, let's look at what comes in the box. We have the GPS installation guide with detailed instructions and pictures. Next, we have the GPS unit and various components. The GPS unit has two LED indicators for satellite and cellular connections and a quick connector slot to receive the wiring harness. Next, we have the wiring harness with the quick connector and attached warning buzzer. Next, we have the starter interrupt relay. And lastly, we have the accessory wire connector packet with the most common connectors necessary to complete the installation, as well as an inline fuse for surge protection and a Velcro patch for secure GPS mounting. Now let's take a quick look at all the wires and their connections. Our red wire will be a 12 volt constant power, and of course our black wire will be a chassis ground. Our yellow, blue, and green wires will connect to our starter interrupt relay. We have a white wire for ignition sense and extra purple wire for alternate connections, which we talk about later during the installation. The other orange and gray wires are only used during programming. As we spoke about before, the yellow, green, and small gauge blue wires connect to matching colors on the wiring harness. And finally, our red and blue wires will connect to the starter solenoid wire. Before we move on to the installation part of our video, let's review the tools and supplies we need for a successful installation. We have our drill with a variety of bits, our wire strippers, our wire crimpers, our wire cutters, our multimeter, our panel tools, a variety of sockets and a ratchet, and finally we have our firewall plug tool. We also have our self-tapping screws, zip ties, electrical tape, and our wire connector packet, which includes a variety of wire connectors and a terminal connector for our ground wire. This packet also includes a Velcro patch for mounting the GPS device and an inline fuse assembly which will connect to the GPS power line to protect the device and vehicle from a power surge. Before we demonstrate the correct installation process, let's talk a little bit about our test lights or circuit testers. Most test lights will test for current or power. The problem is most test lights won't reveal the voltage of the current. There are many low voltage wires in cars these days, and just because you get a power indicator on your test light does not mean it's 12 volts and sufficient to operate your GPS device. That is why we only recommend using a digital voltmeter to locate the correct wire with the correct amount of voltage. Now let's move on to the installation part of our video. Hi, I'm Rowan from Spirion's installation team, and I'm going to show you how to install an Edge LTE device. For most cars on the market today, you will need to remove some of the dash panels to access the wires we need. Before you start the search for your 12 volt constant and ignition wire connection points, we recommend always doing a little research. There are multiple free as well as pay for websites and forums that will help you find the location and colors of the wires you need. As a professional Spirion GPS installer, I always make the best possible connections when connecting my 12 volt constant and ignition wires to their source. The technique we use at Spirion is called the poke and wrap technique. Let's take a look at how this is done. Now that we have located our wires, let's connect our post connector to our ground wire and secure it to the chassis with a self-tapping screw. Always use the chassis or kick panel for ground and never use any removable metal bracket or plate, and never connect to an existing ground wire. Now that our ground wire is securely attached, let's connect the supplied inline fuse harness to our 12 volt constant power wire with the supplied butt connector. Now let's test the 12 volt constant wire that we found in our research. First, we need to choose the correct setting on our voltage meter and probe our selected wire. Our 12 volt connection needs to be the largest gauge 12 volt wire we can find, and with our voltage meter attached, we start the engine. The 12 volt wire needs to remain 12 volts through the engine cranking step. If it loses voltage, we will need to look for another wire that will maintain voltage. We will now use the poke and wrap technique to make the power connections. When connected to constant power, the LED indicators will begin to flash. Once the GPS has connected to the local cellular network, the green LED will stay solid and once the satellites lock onto the GPS, the red LED will stay solid. This tells us the GPS is ready for communication. Our next step is to connect the white warning buzzer wire to the ignition wire we found in our research. The ignition wire should read 0 volts with the key switch off and 12 volts with the key on and through the cranking phase. If the voltage drops off, you will need to locate another ignition source to connect to. Now that we have confirmed our ignition wire, we will use the same poke and wrap method we used with our 12 volt power connection. Okay, so with our initial wiring completed, we can now mount our GPS up in the dash, making sure there are no pieces of metal to obstruct the satellite view from above. Which brings up an important point. GPS devices should never be installed under the hood because satellites can't see them under metal. Also, the device is not waterproof or able to withstand the heat generated in the engine compartment, so they should always be installed inside the passenger compartment of the vehicle and as high up in the dash as possible. The provided Velcro patch is good for securing the device in the dash, and pay special attention to the "this side down" sticker on the GPS for proper orientation and operation. The addition of a zip tie will serve to hold the GPS wiring in place and ensure a long-lasting secure placement. Now that our initial wiring and GPS device placements are completed, it's time to install our starter relay. In older cars, the starter solenoid wire can be accessed under the dash, but as technology evolves, more and more of these connections will be made under the hood at the main fuse box. To do this, we will need to run the rest of our wires through the firewall. We will first need to locate a rubber grommet or plug in the firewall and insert the remaining wires from the inside of the vehicle. Inserting the wires through the rubber plug can be easily done with the firewall plug tool. Now that our remaining wires have been run through the firewall, let's locate and test our starter wire that we found in our research. To test, we will need to ground our voltage meter and choose the correct setting. Our starter wire should read 12 volts only when the key is in the forward cranking position. When released back into the resting or run position, the wire should read 0 volts. So now let's probe our wire and test. Now that we have verified our starter wire, we will install our starter relay. First, we cut the wire, and now we will test for the hot or power side of the wire by probing with our voltage meter and turning the key to the forward or cranking position. Our relay comes with the larger gauge red and blue wire. The red wire will connect to the hot or power of our starter wire, and our large gauge blue wire to the starter side of the starter wire. If these are wired backwards, the relay will not work. We can test our relay for functionality by grounding out our green wire. Once grounded to the frame, turn the key to the forward or cranking position. If wired correctly, the engine should not start. Our last 3 wires are pretty simple. Just connect the 3 wires from the relay to the corresponding color wires on the wiring harness that we inserted through the firewall. Green to green, yellow to yellow, and blue to the smaller gauge blue wire from the relay with the provided butt connector. As a footnote, the purple wire is an extra wire added in case you need to make either a 12 volt constant or an ignition wire connection under the hood with the starter. Once the wires have all been connected, we can tuck away our wires and secure the relay, always making sure the job looks factory clean. Hi, this is the installation verification portion of the process, where we will use the installation mobile app to verify our installation. To download the installer app, visit either the Apple Store or the Google Play App Store and research for Spirion Installer App. After you have downloaded the app, call 877-563-0440, extension 2. for customer support to get your account set up. Have the following information ready: name of the dealership, CAC lot number you will be installing for, and the serial number of a device that the dealer has in inventory, and finally an email address to receive your verification code. A welcome email will be sent to the email address you provided to the Spirion customer support. The email should be sent within a few minutes of your registration with customer service. If you do not receive it, please check your spam or junk folder before contacting customer service again. Once the email has been received, open the installer app and select register. When the register screen comes up, enter the PIN that you received in your welcome email and the email address you provided earlier. Then select create account. Then the next screen that will come up will ask you for your email address again, and it will direct you to come up with a password. The password requires 8 characters, which has to consist of upper and lowercase letters. and a number and a symbol. Then select Create Account after you fill in the information. Enter your email address and password and hit the sign in button in the blue line. The next screen will come up. Will show the dealership you are installing for. If you install for multiple dealerships, choose from the list of the one that you are installing for at this time. If you choose the wrong store, the device will not be there to install on that. Make sure location services is turned on and allowed for the installer app on your phone. Now you will scan the GPS device. Please remember to scan the serial number on the device. You can manually enter the serial number also. Please verify that the serial number is correct on the phone. Scan the VIN number of the vehicle, which you can find either on the side of the door or on top of the dash. After you scan the VIN, make sure the serial number is the same on the car and the app. You can also enter the VIN manually if necessary. After you can scan the VIN, it will prompt you to fill the missing information like color, odometer, etc. If the device had previously begun an installation process, you must select delete and start over. At the bottom of the screen, press the start when you are ready. Then the cellular test will start. If the cellular test passes, the icon next to it will turn green. GPS reception test is next. A locate test to the device is initiated. If the GPS unit is located, the icon will turn green. Between tests, the mobile will display messages at the bottom of the app. You must follow the instructions. Always pay attention to the bottom of the app screen states. Ignition detection test is next. Turn the ignition on and leave it on until you are instructed otherwise. The next step will ask you to turn off the ignition. The icon will turn green for ignition detection. Following the ignition test, payment reminder or warning buzzer test is next. You will be asked to restart the car and verify that you can hear the buzzer. It may take up to 10 seconds for the buzzer to initiate a sound. Press the acknowledgement button when the buzzer goes on. It is important to read the instructions at the bottom of the screen asking you to wait for the buzzer to finish and for the instructions asking you to restart the car once the buzzer has stopped. If you do not hear the buzzer, shut off the car and press continue at the bottom of the screen. Then it will tell you it's preparing the device and next will ask you to attempt to start the engine and the vehicle should not crank. The app will ask you to start the car and it should start, then shut off the car. It will then show you have successfully validated the installation. At the bottom of the screen, you will see a message asking you to click exit. The following error scenarios could come up. Cell signal error. Please check that both lights are solid before beginning the test and the unit is placed high inside the car dash. If you get an ignition test error, please make sure that the white wire is connected to the proper ignition source, that it has voltage when the car is turned on and no voltage when the car is turned off. Check that the wiring and grounds are solid. Make sure that the car was turned off before starting and no voltage can be going through the starter before the test is started. If you receive an error, recheck that your relay is installed correctly and retry the test. Once the test has completely successfully, select the Save and Submit button. We hope you found this video helpful in understanding how to properly install and validate a GPS device installation.